Hold up. Did you know that one film's production literally owned the world's 35th largest air force during shooting? The 1960s wasn't just about Woodstock and disco viewers. It was the golden age of aerial war cinema, when filmmakers ditched the propaganda playbook and asked something radical. What if we showed war as it actually felt? Brutal, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. These films will blow your mind. Let's go. Number 11. Sink the Bismarck, 1960. The British Navy's hunt for Nazis' most notorious warship never felt this intense. Director Lewis Gilbert crafts a cerebral thriller that trades explosive dogfights for something way more dangerous: psychological warfare at sea. The USS Bismarck was a nightmare for Allied forces, nearly unbeatable on the open ocean. This film doesn't glorify combat like earlier war movies did. Instead, it methodically shows how strategy, tension, and sheer willpower matter more than firepower. The aerial reconnaissance sequences are sharp and economical, never wasting a single frame. Featuring authentic naval footage and meticulous historical detail, Gilbert based everything on C.S. Forester's novel, which drew from real declassified operations. Critics praised its documentary-style realism, calling it the definitive Bismarck story. To this day, it remains the only Hollywood dramatization of this legendary battle. What's wild is how the film transforms a naval pursuit into something deeply human, showing crews making impossible choices under impossible pressure. Gilbert proved that war cinema didn't need explosions every 5 seconds to absolutely captivate audiences. Number 10. Catch-22, 1970. Alan Arkin pilots his way through absolute insanity in what might be the most brutally honest anti-war film ever made. Director Mike Nichols takes Joseph Heller's impossible-to-adapt novel and somehow translates its black comedy brilliance to screen. The titular Catch-22 paradox hits harder than any bullet. You're crazy if you fly missions, but requesting to stop flying proves you're sane, so you can't stop. Yossarian watches friends obliterated by flak, gets drenched in their blood at medal ceremonies, and still can't escape the bureaucratic nightmare. Paramount spent over $17 million acquiring 18 flyable B-25 Mitchell bombers, which is absolutely bonkers. These planes flew 1,500 hours total, appearing on screen for just 12 minutes, but those 12 minutes remain unforgettable. Director Nichols refused conventional heroics. That naked medal ceremony, that pilot losing a leg to his own propeller, that death during filming when Second Unit Director John Jordan fell from a bomber at 4,000 feet. This isn't Hollywood sanitizing war. Roger Ebert called the aerial sequences phenomenal, though he faulted the overall structure. The film initially disappointed audiences expecting another patriotic romp, but critics have reassessed it as a masterpiece of absurdist satire that captures war's true insanity. Number 9. Thousand Plane Raid, 1969. Christopher George commands a B-17 bombing squad tasked with an absolutely suicidal mission into Nazi heartland. This lesser-known gem trades star power for brutal authenticity, focusing on the psychological deterioration of men ordered toward certain death. The film methodically shows how leadership, friendship, and survival instinct crumble under relentless enemy fire. Bombing runs aren't thrilling spectacle here. They're grinding, terrifying gauntlets where experienced crews lose everyone they trained with. Producer Boris Siegel creates an atmosphere of genuine dread, never letting audiences forget that daylight precision bombing meant watching your wingman get turned into a flaming coffin. The aerial sequences combine stock footage with newly shot material, creating immersive combat sequences that show tremendous realism. What separates this from standard warfare is the film's unwillingness to provide easy answers or traditional heroism. Veterans of the 8th Air Force had actually worked on the production, insisting on accuracy, even when accuracy meant showing cowardice, desperation, and moral breakdown. Critics appreciated its unflinching portrayal of combat fatigue, though it arrived too late in the decade to build major momentum. Number 8. The Great Escape, 1963. Steve McQueen doesn't just sit in a prison camp and plan escape routes. He pilots a motorcycle toward immortality in what remains one of cinema's most perfectly constructed war-adventure films. Director John Sturges assembles McQueen, James Garner, Charles Bronson, and Richard Attenborough into a machine of pure efficiency and heart. The famous bike chase alone justifies watching this entire film, performed by McQueen's friend Bud Ekins, though McQueen performed most of his own stunts throughout. The Stalag Luft 3 escape was historically massive, involving meticulous tunnel digging, forged documents, and coordination across multiple nationalities. Sturges captures each specialty with respect and humor, never sacrificing emotional weight for entertainment. The film doesn't sanitize history either. Of 76 actual escapees, Only 3 made it to freedom, and 50 were executed by the Gestapo afterward. The final act carries that tragedy like a hammer, reminding audiences that escape wasn't guaranteed victory. Elmer Bernstein's stirring score became iconic, perfectly capturing that defiant prisoner spirit. The film grossed $1.7 million on its $4 million budget, making it one of 1963's biggest hits. Modern viewers often forget the real human cost, but the film ensures they don't leave the theater forgetting. Number 7. Von Ryan's Express, 1965. Frank Sinatra hanging up his tuxedo for military fatigues shouldn't work as dramatically as it does. Director Mark Robson channels pure tension as Sinatra's Colonel Ryan orchestrates the hijacking of a German transport train carrying 600 Allied prisoners across Nazi-occupied Italy. This isn't Ocean's 11 with explosives and charm. It's a claustrophobic sprint toward freedom where every decision carries lethal consequences. Production was notoriously brutal, with Sinatra drinking heavily between takes in scorching Italian summer heat while clashing with Robson over directorial choices. That tension somehow translated into the film's greatest asset, genuine, palpable dread. What shocked test audiences was the ending. Ryan gets gunned down yards from safety, denied the fairy tale rescue audiences expected. Studio executives wanted reshoots, but the filmmakers held firm, understanding that earned tragedy means something. Critics praised this refusal to provide easy comfort, recognizing Sinatra's character as genuinely morally compromised, willing to sacrifice prisoners to achieve his objective. The film earned $17 million against its $5.5 million budget, proving that the chairman of the board could anchor serious dramatic material without a single musical number. Number 6. The Sand Pebbles, 1966. Steve McQueen trades his motorcycle for a river gunboat in what might be his greatest dramatic performance. Director Robert Wise examines American imperialism through the eyes of a mechanical genius just trying to keep his ship running while political upheaval explodes around him. The film refuses Hollywood's comfortable narrative that America was the unambiguous good guy. McQueen's Jake Holman witnesses torture, sees civilians caught in crossfire, and gradually confronts the violent reality of imperial occupation. Running nearly 200 minutes, the film sprawls across 1920s China with documentary-style realism. McQueen based his performance on extensive interviews with actual Navy veterans from China Station, bringing authentic complexity to a character torn between duty and conscience. The production shot in Taiwan and Hong Kong during brutal heat, with McQueen repeatedly clashing with Wise over character development. That friction created something special, genuine discomfort that audiences felt through the screen. McQueen received his only Oscar nomination for the role, though he lost to Lee Marvin. The film cost $12 million and grossed $13.2 million, but its real impact came as Vietnam War protests intensified. Audiences recognized parallels between 1920s China and contemporary Southeast Asia, transforming the film into an accidentally prophetic statement about American intervention. Number 5. Battle of Britain, 1969. Guy Hamilton assembled 109 vintage fighter planes for this $3 million gamble that temporarily made producer Harry Saltzman's fleet the world's 35th largest air force. Laurence Olivier, Michael Caine, Trevor Howard, and Christopher Plummer anchor an all-star cast defending British skies against overwhelming German assault. This isn't a character drama that occasionally includes flying. This is a technical masterpiece obsessed with showing exactly what aerial combat felt like in 1940. Hamilton required genuine RAF veterans to choreograph dogfights according to actual wartime combat rules, ensuring every move matched historical precedent. Some planes were piloted by men who'd fought the real Battle of Britain, adding a haunting authenticity that actors could never fabricate. Hamilton cut no corners. He filmed on actual RAF airfields, used real Spitfires and Hurricanes, even acquired Spanish-built Messerschmitts and Heinkels. The film's aerial sequences consumed 8 months of production, with cameras mounted on trainer aircraft, capturing genuine aerobatics. Critics noted the character work dragged occasionally, with Roger Ebert sarcastically observing that the planes had better dialogue than the actors. Nevertheless, the dogfights remain technically unexcelled, achieving something CGI still struggles with: raw, untamed aerial chaos. The film cost $14 million and grossed $7.3 million worldwide, establishing Hamilton's practical effects mastery as the gold standard for aviation cinema. Number 4. Where Eagles Dare, 1968. Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood infiltrate a Nazi castle in the Alpine Mountains in what might be the perfect action thriller wrapped in wartime clothing. Written specifically as a screenplay by Alistair MacLean, the story features impeccable twists where every character harbors secret agendas. Burton was desperate for a box office hit after several flops, delivering his most physical performance as Major Smith, a British officer hiding multiple identities beneath a charming exterior. Eastwood's character kills approximately 74 German soldiers, earning him the nickname The Machine among crew members. Director Brian G. Hutton captures alpine locations with stunning photography, filming at the actual Schalow-Hohenfels Castle in Austria. Production faced brutal winter conditions with temperatures dropping to -20 degrees while actors suffered altitude sickness during mountain sequences. The famous cable car escape uses actual alpine transportation systems, with both stars performing their own stunts despite studio insurance concerns. MacLean's script is a masterclass in misdirection. Nothing is what it appears. The rescue mission becomes something darker. The trusted officers contain hidden betrayals. Box office success came immediately, grossing $21.3 million worldwide. Film historians recognize Where Eagles Dare as foundational to the action genre, inspiring everything from James Bond sequences to modern Mission Impossible productions. Number 3. The Battle of Algiers, 1966. Gillo Pontecorvo crafts something revolutionary, a war film without traditional heroes or obvious morality. This Algerian resistance drama captures urban warfare, terrorism, counter-terrorism, and the impossible choices that emerge when colonized populations fight for independence. The film refuses to lionize either side, instead examining tactics, psychological manipulation, and the blurred lines between warfare and atrocity. Pontecorvo uses documentary-style black-and-white cinematography, creating visceral immediacy that color photography never achieves. The bombing sequences contain explosive tension precisely because viewers understand both bombers and targets as humans. The interrogation scenes remain torture to watch, not because of graphic violence but because the moral framework collapses entirely. The Algerian military provided authentic consultation, ensuring historical accuracy while maintaining artistic integrity. Critics initially dismissed it as too political, but the film gained reassessment as one of cinema's most intellectually sophisticated examinations of conflict. Every police academy in the world studies this film for its technical authenticity regarding urban combat strategy. Pontecorvo achieved something rare, creating art that horrifies while enlightening, that refuses comfortable narratives while respecting audience intelligence. Number 2. Dunkirk, 1958. John Mills leads stranded British soldiers across beachheads toward evacuation in what producer Michael Balin called the biggest production he'd ever mounted. Director Leslie Norman tells a deceptively simple story. Soldiers are trapped behind enemy lines in France, desperate to reach Dunkirk for rescue, while civilians back in Britain mobilize their own boats to help. What elevates the material is Norman's commitment to showing the psychological weight of desperation. Miles and his men move through mud, fear, and exhaustion without receiving traditional combat heroics. The film became the second highest-grossing film in Britain for 1958, suggesting audiences craved this authenticity. Flying sequences integrate stock footage with new material, creating a sense of constant threat without requiring massive set pieces. Norman understands that war films don't need non-stop explosions. Tension comes from scarcity, waiting, and uncertainty. The structure intercuts between stranded soldiers and civilian rescue efforts, suggesting that some victories come from ordinary people refusing to abandon their soldiers. Critics appreciated the film's surprisingly moving climax, where dual narrative threads intersect almost like something Tarantino would execute decades later. The film's influence extended far beyond its initial release, establishing templates for subsequent evacuation narratives. Number 1. 12 O'Clock High, 1949. Gregory Peck takes command of a demoralized B-17 bomber group in what might be the most psychologically authentic examination of leadership under combat stress ever filmed. Director Henry King captures the 8th Air Force's daylight precision bombing campaign over Nazi-occupied Europe with devastating honesty. The film doesn't hide the human toll. Bomber crews experience 2% survival rates in early campaigns, watching friends incinerated by flak before completing their first dozen missions. Peck's General Frank Savage restores discipline through ruthlessness, but the film refuses to celebrate his methods. Instead, it shows him gradually cracking under the strain of sending young men toward probable death. The opening sequence features an actual B-17 crash landing, performed by legendary stunt pilot Paul Montz, who crashed a real bomber without miniatures or models. The film mixed actual combat footage from Allied and Luftwaffe cameras with newly shot material, creating visceral authenticity. 12 B-17s were used for filming, some contaminated with radioactivity from post-war bikini atomic experiments, limiting their usable footage. The Academy nominated 12 O'Clock High for Best Picture, though it lost to All the King's Men. Dean Jagger won Best Supporting Actor, and the sound department earned Oscars for authentic reproduction. The film remains studied in Air Force leadership courses, proving that authentic examination of warfare resonates across decades. Veterans considered it sacred, finally showing the Air War's genuine cost without propaganda or false heroics. There you have it, viewers. 11 films proving that the 1960s didn't just produce killer music and fashion. It produced the most intellectually complex, psychologically brutal war cinema ever made. These weren't sanitized propaganda pieces. They were honest examinations of what leadership, survival, and sacrifice actually meant. Drop a comment telling us which film absolutely shattered you. But here's the real question that'll spark massive debate. Are these morally complex 1960s aerial films genuinely superior to today's CGI-heavy blockbusters with their clear heroes and villains? Or do modern audiences actually need simplified storytelling? Let's fight about it below.